have time. I'm so sorry.
Do not worry. I mean, we only need it, as you saw with the earlier keynote, if internet connections fail, and we've got one, but obviously having it live is much more important. So anyway, Peter, happy birthday.
We've got another laptop just in case. So
Great. So as I say, happy birthday, Peter, for 2 days ago.
Yes, I'm trying to forget them at the moment, but we had a great time.
Great. Lovely. Okay, so I think we're going to start now. So welcome everyone. Let me explain how this is going to run, this session. I'm going to start off. So I'm Richard Vellerman. I'm one of the trustees of AFINet, and I'm chairing this session. And unlike some of the other sessions, some of the other papers, and some of the other two keynotes, this isn't going to be lots of research data. This is going to be a conversation. One of the themes that's come up very much over the 2 days, and particularly today, I think, is about personal experience. And today is going to be very much about personal experience and but in line with our views in AFINet, it's not solely people talking about their personal experiences, it's also reflecting on them, standing back from that and thinking, how can we learn from people's personal experiences and use those ideas to develop policy, to develop better services for people, and so on and so forth. So in this session, I'm going to ask first Peter and then Steph to spend about 5 minutes each outlining, in a sense, in quotes, their story. Now, obviously, stories are massive, and trying to do it in 5 minutes is rather tricky, but I have confidence that both of them will be able to do that. And then we're going to have a three-way conversation where I'm going to use the stress, strain, information, coping support model, which was devised by my colleagues Jim Orford, Lorna Templeton, Alex Capello, and myself some years ago, to ask them about each of those elements, about stress and strain, about information, about coping, and about support. Now, before we move on, I'm just going to say a word about the stress, strain, information, coping support model. It's a very simple way of thinking about how family members are affected. Someone's problematic use of gambling, in this case, or drugs or alcohol, causes a lot of strain on affected family members and other members of the family, and cause a lot of strain for the family as a dynamic process as well. And our view, based on a lot of research that we've done and continue to do, suggested that ways of mediating or minimizing that strain that the stress causes, information can help that a great deal. People feeling more informed about what's going on. Coping and how people cope and different ways of coping can have an impact on how much strain they feel from any given type of amount of stress, and how much support they get can have an impact on how strained they feel by the amount of stress that there is. So that's the model that we're going to use. So I hope that we'll hear from Steph and Peter, both about what was happening for them at the time when the problem was more severe, but also what helped them to overcome the situation, and also what lessons there are for policy, for research, and so on in looking at their experiences. Now, let me introduce Steph and Peter. You'll have often heard people say when they introduce people, well, X really needs no introduction. And this is a case which is actually true. Peter is a world-renowned figure. The number of times we've said to people, oh, by the way, we're going to be talking to Peter Shilton. Really? Oh, he's my hero. So actually, someone only said that to me this morning. We've got somebody working in the house, and Jill mentioned to him that you were going to be on. And he said, oh, he was my hero growing up. So Peter is the world-renowned England goalkeeper. He holds the England record of the most capped footballer, male or female. And he also has the world record as the person who's made the most competitive appearances playing football anywhere in the world, 1,411. And yet, as we'll hear, in his private life, he suffered a 45-year gambling addiction until he met Steph, his wife. And Steph Shilton has a long career working in the NHS, more than 27 years, and she uses that expertise as a therapist to work to combat gambling addiction. Don't know why that did that. She's no longer in the NHS. Sorry, it's jumping around all over the place. She's no longer in the NHS. She works with a leading charity to develop support services for those affected by gambling issues. So together, Peter and Steph have championed legislative changes, contributed extensively to reducing gambling harms, and they're making significant strides in awareness and support mechanisms for young people. So I'm now going to stop this screen and slideshow, if I can get it to work there, and hand over first to Peter and then to Steph. So as they say in some television program or other, your 5 minutes starts now.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having us on this. You know, we're very passionate about you know, the harm of gambling and the people around a gambler. And in my case, you know, I started playing professional football when I was 17 as a goalkeeper, which is quite unusual. And I remember my gambling, you know, started in my late teens and sort of accelerated a bit through, you know, my 20s. And I think that because I was playing football and training football, I think I could detach the two, gambling from football, and because of the training and everything, I think that was very beneficial to me in coping with a gambling problem, which didn't really surface in my eyes until a little bit later in my 20s. But obviously, you know, I carried on. It didn't affect my football, but I, you know, increasingly lost money. But the fact was that I was actually earning good money, and money fuels the addiction. So, you know, not to worry, I had a bad day, I'll have a good day next day. And this is obviously true of all gamblers. You know, you kind of block the bad days out and think, I'm going to have another great win. And of course, you know, this went on until it got a real problem. And I think at some point you don't really want to own up because of the secretiveness and the shame of it. And it just carried on. And, you know, obviously then the internet gambling started, and I'd finished playing football, and it accelerated even more. I used to look on it as a hobby, you know, because my thing was horse racing. It wasn't slots or anything like that. I occasionally went to a casino, but very little. It was horse racing. I had a passion for horse racing. I owned horses. And I think, you know, eventually, you know, became out of hand. People close to me sort of knew. I mean, I lost, you know, friendships over the years, you know, that I regret, you know, because of my gambling. You'll find with most gamblers, you know, they do lose friends. They don't have friendships. They just concentrate on their gambling. And this was the case with me. You know, that was, I looked upon it, oh, well, I'm bored, so I'm going to get later on the internet, and, you know, I'm going to have a day gambling. But, you know, we all know now that that's just a recipe for disaster. And it wasn't until I met Steph, and, you know, she'll tell you in her own words, but she gradually made me know and feel that it was an illness, not just something to be ashamed of and secretive about. And that was a turning point for me. I think, you know, I started to accept it. And I came out, just to finish, I came out, you know, publicly, because we actually heard about, you know, the amount of suicides in youngsters, you know, in the middle 20s, late teens, because they couldn't cope with gambling and they thought they could never stop. And I thought, hold on, I can do something here. I can say, look, you can stop. You know, you need the right help. You need to understand that you're never going to win at gambling. You know, I had big wins, but I always gave the money back. And I'd suddenly realized that, you know, I wasn't going to win, and I was wasting a lot of time. And, you know, we wanted to say to people, don't take the ultimate sacrifice. You can stop. And that's the reason I came out.
Thank you, Peter. Amazing. Such a lot you've encapsulated in your 5 minutes. I'm very appreciative of that. Steph, your 5 minutes.
Yeah, hi everybody. I met Peter 13 years ago, and I'd had a long career in the NHS, and I noticed suspicious behaviour around Peter, particularly being very protective over his telephone, his mobile phone, using it outside and when I wasn't around. Yeah, so I think as an affected other, there is a third party in your relationship, and mine, unfortunately, was the bookmaker. So it was a bit of a game of cat and mouse, really. I had to do a lot of investigating because Peter was in complete denial around his gambling addiction. He was very defensive, and it was very secret and very hidden. And so it took me about 3.5 years to finally getting to the point where he actually quit, which was, I always say, one of the greatest moments of my life. I think the thing, Richard, that we struggled with, and what Peter struggled with, was the shame and the embarrassment. And I think, having listened to some fantastic speakers today, as a loved one, we are just as much a victim of gambling harm as what the gambling addict is. I lived the life. You live the life of the gambling addict. You live the highs, the lows. You live on the edge the whole time. And that's how I felt, but it was incredibly lonely. And because of Peter's fame, he was always very, very worried about this coming out into public. And that also built up anxiety within me, because I kept thinking, if I tell someone about this problem that I'm witnessing, and it was horrendous, will they go and tell the press, or will they tell me to leave him? And there was no way that I was going to do that. So I had probably the biggest challenge of my life. I had to take the gambling addiction on head on, face to face. And I knew that Peter would never go into therapy. I knew it wasn't an option. And as an affected other, counselling, it would never have worked for me. And I, in a perverse way, I've had the luxury of speaking to hundreds of loved ones over the years. And what we want is control back in our lives, because often we find out at crisis moment, which sends us into sometimes the biggest trauma of our lives. We find out the extent of it when towards the very end. So a lot of the work that I endorse is more about life coaching and getting that control back in your life and understanding. And I was very lucky because I had a clinical look on life. So I looked upon Peter's addiction as a clinical and an illness, and he said that helped. And I know, again, some individuals don't like that language, but when I looked at Peter, his well-being and his mental health towards the end was so poor. And as a loved one, we feel like we have their life in our hands. That's very real. It's like, if I walk out on him, I believe that he might have committed suicide, and you're walking around with that all the time. So, in the UK, I've pushed and pushed and pushed for support for affected others, because we can be very much the antidote for relapse prevention as well. We play a massive part in that. But unfortunately, 6 weeks counselling was never going to help me out. This was a long investment that I had to do for Peter's recovery. Is my 5 minutes up, or have I gone over, Richard? Sorry.
I think that's about it, but that's wonderful. Thank you. So let me just summarize a little bit and then ask you some more questions. I mean, what you were talking, Steph, about, and both of you in a sense were talking about the impact that this had for you, Peter. It was a almost something you saw as a pastime and maybe a bit of an escape initially, but obviously gradually it encroached more and more and more. And for you, Steph, you talked about when you realized there was such a problem, about the loneliness, the highs and lows, the anxiety, the sense of responsibility that you had, and the worry about talking about it to other people. Now, there was a particular issue of worry talking about it to other people because of Peter's fame, but within that, I think it's something that many, many family members feel, that somehow it's a breach of trust to talk about somebody else's problem, because you're exposing something about them, and that seems to be wrong. Have I got that right?
Yes, totally. And also because everyone's finances is very private. It's something that's installed in us, isn't it? Nobody here today would probably say, what they've got on their credit card. And there is an element of real privacy around finance. So you're up against that also. So for a gambling addict, it's even easier for them to hide with the finance. And as a loved one, it's that embarrassment. It's like, and as I say, the trauma of the shock of finding out. And I think with gambling addiction, that's what's quite separate to any other addiction, is because the financial recovery can take years, and the trauma of the financial harm can be mega, it can be huge.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that you were saying, Steph, about Peter was that initially, when you started to notice that there were these things, these telltale signs, he was very defensive. Peter, she said you were very defensive. Yeah. What enabled you not to be so defensive?
I think it was obviously meeting Steph. We fell in love quite quickly, I think, and. But, I thought, well, she was going to work, and, I used to stay over and get my computer out. And I thought this was normal behavior, and, you kind of dismiss. I mean, when I look back now, it was crazy. I'd lost so much money over the years, but always seemed to find an excuse in my head to carry on. And I think it was a mixed excitement, I used to think, well, I'm on my own. I've got nothing else to do, which was wrong, because there's always something you can do.
Of course.
And
I understand that was very much your thinking. I mean, and I think for lots of people that will be their thinking. But I suppose it's the change point that I'm particularly wanting to get at here. Something changed in you. Initially, at some level, you must have realized that there was, in order to be defensive, you need something in you was saying, actually, no, go away. I don't want you to interrupt, because I want to carry on doing this. And yet somehow you made that change. And what was it? What was it that Steph did, or what was the understanding that you got?
Yeah. Well, I used to get a racing paper every day for the form and everything, and Steph always used to always had the losing paper again, and things like that. And she started saying, well, I'm going to beat the bookie, you've never have, sort of thing. And then she
did. You wanted to get married.
I wanted to get married, and you say, I'm not getting married until we sort out the finances.
Until the bookie's gone. Yeah. I'm not marrying the bookie, I kept saying. So I did have a big carrot.
And then finally she started looking at houses, and on the internet. I said, what are you looking at houses for? She says, well, I'm thinking of moving. And I suddenly thought, oh, she's got fed up of me. And it was a combination of a lot of things. And I think deep down, I just got to a point where I just fed up of the pressure of gambling and losing. And, that's what it is. You lose and you just dismiss it and carry on. And, I remember it was one weekend that, I'd lost all my available cash. And I went upstairs and phoned an agent who I'd done some work for and said, look, can you let me have a bit of money up front, because I wanted to carry on gambling. And I said, I'll give you a drink, couple hundred quid. And he'd do it, And so I got ready funds. And then I looked round and Steph was behind me, and I could just see in her face, she'd had enough, that I was trying to be secretive and that sort of thing. And something clicked in my head. I knew from that moment I was never going to gamble again, because I just realized how much time and energy and friendships I'd wasted by gambling. And it's well, now with the internet, I mean, it's just so toxic. It's unbelievable.
I think I just gently chipped away at
Yeah.
him. So I used to use the word lose an awful lot, and I never ever put pressure on him, because I could see he was living with immense pressure. So I knew an ultimatum would be the worst thing for him. But I used to keep saying to you, Denai, you have an illness and I'm here for you.
If I can just say something there, I did take that on board very quickly, because I thought to myself, all you've ever done with your football is win. You know, you've had a great career, you've won this, you've won that, you've achieved that. And the only thing in your life you've lost at is gambling. And that word that, you know, kept saying to me, I suddenly thought, come on, you know, you're better than this, you know, let's time to quit and start winning.
I think that's really interesting. One of the great psychiatrists in the field of addiction in the UK was someone called Griffith Edwards, and he used to talk about what one does in therapy with people is nudge. You're nudging people. And something that's very popular in the US is much more confrontational work. But he was a great proponent of nudging. And it sounds like what you were doing, Steph, was constantly nudging and giving little pushes and so on. And they accumulate in a way which, as you say, a direct confrontation might not have been the most helpful thing for you.
I've had that. Yeah, I've had that in the past. I mean, I'm not going to obviously mention about friends and what have you, that have said, Peter, you know, and really sort of had a go at me about gambling. You know, you're wasting your money, blah, blah. And I used to go, because, you know, I was very strong-willed in many ways. And I think that's why I kept my football separate. And I used to just take offense to it and think, you know, I'm not being taught that, you know, I can win at it, don't worry about that. And that's a very true point. You know, I think nudging, in my case anyway, was
very gentle. And I was saying things like, I would do it sort of half flippant but half meaning it. You know, Peter would say, oh, I'd love to go to Barbados with you one day, and I'd say, well, the whole time the bookie's around, that's not going to happen. So I actually I named the addiction. I gave the addiction a name. I separated it. So then Peter then could start to look at his addiction. And it's something that I talk to, you know, many families around, is if you can detach the addiction. I knew that Peter was a wonderful, loving man, and I was never going to give up on him. But when I started to detach the addiction from him, it enabled him to then look at the addiction head on. You know, he said, and I never put that blame on him. I was always like, it's because you have an illness. But I think that was really the key thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that's very, really very interesting as well. A lot of people have difficulties with the concept of illness and addiction, linking the two together. And I understand a lot of those issues, the reasons why people have that. But it sounds like for you two, in the way you were thinking about and dealing with the gambling, thinking about it as an illness was particularly helpful.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I've since been, we've done a lot of work around language and stigma, and to try to relieve that in the UK and internationally as much as possible. But all I can do is tell you what I witnessed, and I saw a very mentally ill human being. And when he went through withdrawal, I saw him having to work really hard through his recovery. And to me, that looks just like an illness. It's like something I had seen in the NHS. You know, he was up all night gambling. He looked terrible. He wasn't eating properly.
Yeah, I was tired, very tired mentally. Yeah, it does. That's what it does to you. It drags you down, and you know, you lose sight of things, and you know, there's such a better life out there than gambling all the time.
Yes.
You know, you waste I would say you waste so much time gambling, as an addict, you know, you don't enjoy life. I mean, it's as simple as that. And how many win? Very, very few.
Yeah. In your sort of journey, both of you, do you feel that that information was something that was readily available about gambling, problem gambling, addictive gambling?
No.
Right.
I mean,
Carry on.
I had worked in secondary care as well as primary care in the UK, here in the UK. And I can tell you now that GPs do not ask, if you go to visit your GP here in the UK with mental health issues, they do not ask you about gambling. And so when Peter gave up in 2015, I feel that I'm so proud of Peter, you know, because when we did decide to publicly come out and tell our story, we thought we were just going to tell our story, hopefully save a few lives, and that would be it. But the work that we've gone on to do has been internationally phenomenal. It really has. And I feel that the UK has come on quite a lot around education and particularly around treatment. I think on affected others, we're really at the very start of it. But some of the work, you know, that we've done is to try and encourage that. So we have, when we first went to Parliament, we asked that public health was more involved in the gambling addiction. I mean, this was 7 years ago. Peter has managed to get football advertising banned on the front of football shirts, which he'll talk to you a bit about if we get time. We've hoped to reduce suicides as a result. We wrote in the white paper and we supported the levy. We've worked on reducing stigma campaigns and language when we talk about illness, and being politically correct in our language. You know, I can only use the language that I felt along Peter's journey. And also we heavily support researchers. It was lovely to see Sharon on here earlier from Bristol University.
I mean, my thing, you know, is sport, but football in particular, you know, is the amount that of advertising, the amount that, you know, that football is getting involved. And football is a family sport, you know, it always has been. And you know, football is you know, is advertising gambling more than anything, because you know, they advertise it as something everybody goes out and enjoys, and it's big fun and all this. And you know, I think that youngsters coming through, we have managed to get the advertising off the front of the shirts in the Premier League starting next season, but there's far more advertising going on. And you know, it's all about money. You know, these gambling companies are paying big money.
So we work at trying to reduce harm and stigma, and it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to reach out for help. And in answer to your question, Richard, I still think we have a long way to go into getting the understanding out there. I think public health needs to be far more on board. And yeah, I still think we have a way to go.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm going to slightly move away from what I was going to be, the system I was going to be using. I'm very interested in this stuff that you're doing about policy and changing policy. I mean, as you say, money talks, and there's a great deal of it coming from the addiction industry, gambling, drinks industry, obviously for alcohol, still very strong tobacco lobbies and so on. And they have so much more money than we're ever going to have on the other side, where we're trying to develop more healthy policies. So how did you persuade the FA to not have gambling adverts on the shirts? I mean, they must have lost a huge amount of money.
We got over 100,000 signatures on a campaign, and we went to Downing Street, And we wrote to the Prime Minister, didn't you? And I think Peter was so brave doing that. You know, he really put his neck on the line. And the industry, you know, took it quite harshly, really. So yeah, it was lots of campaigning, lots of work, but the general British public supported us so much, didn't they?
Yeah, I think people know what's right and what's wrong. And as I said, you know, it's a family sport, football in particular, and you know, there's a lot of youngsters go and watch it, and the gambling companies know they're the next generation of gamblers, and sport, football in particular, is such a good product. And as I say, they always make it out that it's fun and everything, and they put all the tools in. Sorry.
That's the reason why they're not going to want you to succeed in reducing the influence of their influence in terms of advertising. So I mean, I understand why they are very keen, as you say, if sell it as a family sport, a young person, and add the linkage to gambling right at the beginning. That's marvelous for the gambling industry. But I suppose I'm hearing your message is a mixture of things. I mean, public support is terribly important. So getting, what did you say, 100,000 signatures?
And also
how did you do that?
The media, the media have been amazing. Absolutely, we must have done well over 180 interviews and documentaries, and that's across Europe and some internationally as well. We wasn't expecting to have this amount. I mean, Peter got a CBE for the work that he did this year as well, and it's been incredible. The media, I think it was because of the courage that Peter showed, you know, and we're not anti-gambling. It's just like, you know, just be a bit, have that raising awareness.
Well, yeah. I mean, all we can do is keep raising awareness, but I think sooner or later, you know, it's going to get out of hand. I mean, I know that in football, you know, professional football, there's an unbelievable amount of, you know, people who gamble and gamble probably too much. We've had stories come out, you know, players getting banned through gambling, and it's rife. But when you're earning money, you know, you can, as I did, you can conceal it. But you know, there's companies, TV companies who are advertising products, so you know they're going to be very reluctant to pull the plug on it. And it's just we've just got to keep knocking on the door and hope that you get, you know, government to be honest and say, look, this is harming the nation, this is harming children, we need to do something about it.
I think also, Richard, in answer to your question with regard to the media, I think once we started doing the interviews, the public outcry that came from that was huge. And I think that's what the media picked up on quite quickly, because it's quite an ugly subject. And to come out and lay yourself bare with it is a brave thing to do. But also we did this morning, which is a huge program over here in the UK, and as an example of why we do what we done was we were talking about a self-help book that we'd brought out. It's sold out now, but we went into the green room afterwards, and my contact details are a public number, and this Asian guy texted and said, I had all the pills on the table ready to commit suicide over my gambling addiction, and I heard you and Peter talking on the TV, and I picked my mobile up and rang my mum. That's why we do what we do.
And that, I suppose, how important do you think, you've talked about the media appearances and how strongly they resonate with so many people, and how that and the large number of signatures and so on were terribly important. But how important do you think it is to have an extremely well-known celebrity or fit public figure at the front of this? Do you think that, I mean,
it's a massive asset. It's a massive asset. I mean, the Norwegian government are flying us over in October to talk to their ministers and their industry.
I think really there's more and more awareness now over the last few years. There's more and more awareness. There's more and more people realizing that it has been kind of a silent addiction, because when you've got drugs you can see it, when you've got alcohol you can see it in the person, but gambling, it's very difficult to detect. And I think the awareness side of it is becoming greater. More and more people are suffering from it. Family members are suffering because loved ones are getting addicted, and it's just keep knocking on the door, and hoping that that there will be changes made.
And also, every loved one that I ever speak to, when they start speaking to me, the very first thing they'll say is, "Oh, it's so good to be able to talk to someone that understands." That lived experience for a loved one is worth more than a dozen counselling sessions. If I could have had somebody that I could have picked the phone up and they could have said, "Yes, Steph," and understood and lived experience, I think is very important.
Oh yeah, well, you sort of talking, as Steph said, you're talking, in my case, it was over decades, because gambling's changed so much. When I started out, there was 3 high street bookmakers, and now you can bet on anything, and you've got a casino in your pocket with the phone. So it's more and more addictive, and that's why the gambling companies are becoming more and more. They're not losing money.
Yeah. So Steph, when you were trying to deal with all of this, before the light dawned with Peter and things changed, how did you cope with it?
You live the life of the gambling addict. So I knew that when he was winning, I knew when he was losing, I knew when he was lying, and it was absolutely exhausting. So I definitely suffered from gambling harm, and that's why I did my diploma as a life coach, because it was the life coaching skills that I had. So I learned that my well-being was really important. Taking time out for me was very important. It was okay, Steph, to just step away from it for a moment. Detaching the addiction from Peter, gave me that inner strength. And I knew I had the biggest battle of my life, really, with this addiction. But I think well-being was a really big part of it for me, and because I was very gently coercing him round the understanding that he was ill, because he was in denial. You can't just sit him down.
Were you ever tempted to either be more confrontational, or did you have arguments as a result of it ever?
Yeah, because sometimes a gambling addict will do what I call verbal sparring. So when they're running out of money or they're losing, which they ultimately do, you have the verbal sparring times where they, try and press the buttons. And I quickly learn, oh, there we go, there's the bookie showing its ugly face. Yeah, you're going to try and press my buttons. No, it's okay. I'm going to go and meet my girlfriend.
You're saying that you very, very early developed this way of separating out the Peter from the addiction. So, and you talked about the bookie. So in a sense, you would say, well, this isn't Peter talking to me, this is the bookie.
Yeah.
And so that sounds like a very powerful coping mechanism.
And that's what I do with all the loved ones that I speak to. I say to them, don't let the addiction press your buttons, because it loves that. It wants to take you on that same journey. So you've got to see the addiction and manipulate it. I start to manipulate the addiction.
I think as an addict, I can relate to the fact that an addict, would think, or going to treatment, I have treatment, I think I've cured myself, but then I'm going back to, say for example, a boy with his parents who have probably got into debt because they've supported him quite wrongly. In fact, they've given him the fuel to gamble money, and he's going to walk straight back into a confrontational thing. And this is where you know, I think what Steph's saying is the two go together, you know.
Yeah, and I always say that we then climbed a mountain. So Richard, the difficult time for me was in the first 3 months after Pete quit. So when he he quit, I was like, yeah, brilliant. Oh my God, no, those 3 months were hell. For the
Why?
first
Why?
two, well, the first
Trust.
well, the trust, Peter had to help me work for the first year at least on my self-esteem and my self-worth. But the first, particularly the first week, Pete doesn't even remember that week of his life. He was having night sweats, nightmares. It was just horrendous. He couldn't operate mentally. And then I noticed, and nearly every loved one, and I've spoken to hundreds over the years, we all say around about week 6 to 8 is the worst time. That's when the addiction's really kicking off and trying to keep a hold. And that time was really tough for me. And I could see the addiction at its worst, and the withdrawal was really bad. And then after about 3 months, Richard, I noticed things started to plateau. And then after about 6 months, he was wonderful.
Yeah.
But I then had my own issues because I had terrible anxiety around you relapsing.
Yeah, I think
You needed to help me, didn't you?
Yeah, I decided, I mean, I can't relate to the times that Steph's talking about, but I think the turning point is when I just let Steph see everything, my bank accounts, you name it.
I had terrible trust
She
issues.
she could pick my phone up and still can anytime and check my bank accounts, check my phone. I do it because I don't have to, because I think Steph knows that there's no way that I would ever gamble again, because it's of the reasons we talked about. But I think letting her see things, and there's no point in a gambler coming out of treatment and then being secretive, because there won't be the trust there. And
Working through it together.
Working through it together and having that trust, and the gambler's got to let people around him and close family members be able to look and see
that transparency.
See his bank account building up, instead of suddenly getting a knock saying, I need some money. You save and you build a life, and you do other things, and you get friends around you, which we know that addicts don't do.
I have got a lot of other questions, but I'm aware that we've only got perhaps another 15, 16 minutes to go, and I am assuming that lots of other people will want to come in on this. So can I throw it open to people? A number of things people have put in the comments already. And if anybody would like to put their hand up and actually make a comment or ask a question, please do. Click on the raise hand icon on the top right. Lorna's just written, well, I'm waiting for people to put their hands up. I think it's incredible what you're both saying about how you reciprocally helped each other when Peter stopped gambling. I don't think that's something that is considered very much. I think you're absolutely right, Lorna, this thing about reciprocity and how important that is. It comes over very strongly in your joint story.
I think that's what I really endorse in the UK is educating yourself around gambling addiction, so you can understand your loved one and where they're at with their gambling addiction. And then also, if you can work on a recovery together. Peter completely understood my gambling harm that I had suffered, and the trust issues, and we worked at that together. And then all of a sudden you have, because you can't communicate with the gambling addicts, the communication's gone, so you've got to learn a new way to communicate together as well.
Well, if people go into treatment and are away for whatever it is, 6 or 8 weeks, being hopefully cured, then as I just said, the person who is, or family member or friend, whoever it is, needs to be able to, when he comes out, have a better frame of mind and a better understanding that it is an illness, and it's not the person, probably it's the gambling that's made him into what he was.
I mean, I think there's been a lot of research from lots of different places. My colleagues in Italy, for example, did some recently, which showed that for many family members, the worst time is actually just after they stop. And there are lots of reasons for that, but one of them is the when somebody, and it's the case with gambling, but it's also the case with alcohol or drugs, any of these dependency problems, when they're behaving in the way that they are, it's horrible, but it's predictable. When they stop, then it raises hope, but you also many people find from experience that many addictive problems are relapsing problems, and so how many times do you hope? It raises the uncertainty. I think also a number of people are writing in the comment about language, and one of the things that Dave has written is we don't tend to call people addicts. We focus on our loved ones' other amazing qualities, and I think that's one of the things actually that you were saying, Steph, that you separated the addiction from the person. And I think Gallus has written the same thing. It shows that attack the gambling or the drinking or the drug use, and not the gambler or the drinker or the drug user, who is more than just a user. That's why you suffer, because you're attached to him or her as a person, as opposed to those aspects of their behaviour. That's a really important issue.
That works, Richard, particularly well when I've been speaking to fathers, because often fathers I have to work a bit harder with, because they're more sort of black and white. And by doing that separation, I think someone's got their hand up actually, separation works extremely well with a father figure.
Absolutely. I'll just read one more comment out, which is thanks to Steph, Alexandra from Italy. Thanks to Steph, because she's talking about how difficult for her it has been to recognise her own worth, and that's a very nice comment. But you're talking about fathers, and so I'll ask Jim Orford to come in. Jim.
Right. Hello. I mean, first of all, it's just wonderful to meet you. I mean, I was at a couple of meetings recently for peers for gambling reform. One of them talking about advertising and having a campaign to have, get more reform of gambling advertising. But I mean, as a father of someone who's struggled with gambling for a long time, and somebody who's been associated with AFINet right from the beginning, it's just loads of people in the chat are saying what I think, which is, thank you so much for coming, and thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. It's absolutely wonderful you're here. Thank you. But my question is, what I think, Steph, you said you don't think affected others are really as recognized yet, and as services don't exist really. GPs really don't know what to do or what to say. If there's one thing that AFINet should campaign for regarding gambling and affected family members, what should it do? What should AFINet be doing, campaigning about?
I've collared Richard into a meeting. Haven't I, Richard? I have collared Richard into a meeting, because I love the work that everyone does on AFINet, and I'm so pleased that Peter came along to meet you all today, because I think there's no blueprint. There needs to be for affected others. I think we're pinnacle in that journey of recovery, and often the antidote. And also the loved one, can bring the gambling addict into treatment, and that's not even really being recognised. So I think families are often the ones that are saying, come on, pick the phone up, let's get you some help. So I think with AFINet, as I'd love to work more with you all. I think there's so much we could do, so much. There's,
Yeah, but you're basically saying that that you feel that family members need to be educated as much as
education.
Yeah, that to get somebody treatment, which is not easy, because you're in denial, and there's a lot of stigma and shame, you know, to a gambler who knows he's probably spent his own money and many of his family members' money. But there is a way out of it, and like Steph says, it's got to be, you know, the two go together. You know, it's got to be a concerted effort, to get the gambler into treatment, and then obviously when he comes out, being able to have that trust and what have you.
And Jim, it's so complex. You know, family dynamics are so complex. You know, so you know, I find that particularly the elder sister of the siblings is often it's a lot more complex because they're looking after the parents, but also I've noticed that a lot of sisters take the lead role with the gambling addicts and can be instrumental into them coming into treatment. And then the brothers, often they're very estranged from, so it's quite complicated.
There's a lot of dynamics there, isn't it? It's just, I mean, Steph, I'm going to praise her now, because not only did she do wonders for me, but you know, I do know that, you know, by her personality and warmth, she does get her messages across unbelievably well, you know, to people, and in different ways sometimes. And I think that's, you know, that's the secret sometimes, having, you know, the personality to be able to deal with people.
Can I ask a question here to juxtapose two things that you've both said? So Peter, you said that treatment wouldn't have been any use to you because you weren't interested in it and you didn't recognize that there was a problem. And yet you're also talking now about getting people into treatment. And Steph, you said counselling wouldn't have been any use to me. And then you're also saying that what you do is spend your time, what I see, counselling people, talking to people. So there seems to be a mismatch between what you're saying should be on offer and what you've said actually worked for you.
I think for the gambling addicts, it's reaching out to whatever is going to help with you. You know, so some what works for one individual may not necessarily work for another. But I think with affected others, the most effective treatment for an affected other is more likely to be like life coaching, and that more lived experience, as opposed to 6 weeks of counselling wouldn't have touched for me. And I think with Peter, if I could have got him into treatment, trust me, I would have done. But it wasn't an option for Peter.
I think everyone's different, and I mean, the majority probably need to go into treatment. In my case, it was I'd been thinking for quite a while that I was wasting my time, but I think meeting Steph and the way Steph handled it, obviously, you know, did the trick for me. But you know, going into treatment is probably the right thing for the majority, I think.
Okay. Any other hands raised? I'm lots of things coming in on the chat, and Lorna's just put something about gambling-related suicide in the chat as well. While I'm waiting for other people to put their hands up, I'm interested again in the support that both of you received. Clearly, it seems to me, from what I'm hearing from you, that actually you supported each other massively in firstly in helping Peter yourself realize that you had a problem, and then working out how to deal with it, and then you supporting Steph in dealing with the aftermath of you no longer gambling. But were there any other forms of support? Were there other family members that you found at all supportive, either during the process or after, or any professional services that were at all supportive?
No. In my experience, in the 13 years that I've been with Peter, no one has ever said to me, Steph, are you okay?
Gosh, not even in either of your respective families?
No one's ever took me to one side and said, you know, are you okay with this? Are you okay? When we came out on the media, did we? That, you know, there was very little, there wasn't any. No. So we're pretty much out on our own. But having said that, we've met wonderful people in this industry and have great relationships.
We've learned so much. I've learned so much, you know, since I stopped. But I think it was a unique situation between me and Steph, you know, with falling in love and, you know, etc. And I think I was at that time of my life as well, you know, where I just felt, you know, I was wasting my time, and something in me was saying, look, what are you doing, you know? And so I think all those things combined. But I think when you're younger, especially, you know, it's, oh, I don't need help, you know.
We
and
have
all
a
that.
date day every Friday, though, Richard.
You have a what day?
We have
A
a
date
date day
day.
every Friday. Yeah, we've
That's
always
brilliant.
done that since Peter quit. So yeah, we do have a wellbeing date, a date night or a date day
Yeah,
on a
it's
Friday.
just like I say,
It's when I do relationship work with people, that's one of the things I always emphasize, how important it is to have a time for a couple to be together as a couple and to organize that. So well done for that. And I promise, Steph, that when we have our meeting in 10 days' time, I'll start off with asking how you are.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, are there other comments that people want to make? As I say, Gallus, your hand is up. Over to you.
First of all, thank you very much for sharing your experiences, I think, and for the great work you're doing, because I think it's also very important, you know, to have a look on structural issues like advertisement and so on. I just wanted to throw in, because this quite often is a big issue in discussions we have within AFINet, that there are several approaches that target on treatment. And when I started doing addiction research, I first started with a project about a so-called natural recovery, or recovery without treatment. And a big issue was also social support for people managing to get out of an addiction. And I think so your story is also encouraging that it's not only treatment, and I think also social relationships for most people are far more important than treatment is. And so so thank you very much for this. And I think we all should also remind ourselves that a large proportion of people with addiction problem manage to get out of these problems on their own.
Thank you so
That's
much.
absolutely,
Yes, very true.
that's so true, Gallus. But I mean, one of the key things I think about people who manage to get out of addiction on their own, from my reading of the research, is about the social support they have around them, the relationships that they're in. And I think it's likely, Peter, you would have found it more difficult to get out of this on your own if you didn't have Steph.
Yeah, definitely. You know, I think that it is something that you do need help with, but I think it's basically understanding what's happening to you. You know, addiction. You know, why do I do it? It's, you know, how, you know, is it doing me any good? What have I got out of it? You know, I looked at gambling and just thought I've just lost money. You know, and I was obviously to an advanced age at the time, and I could relate to different things, whereas maybe somebody who's younger might not. But you know, it's understanding the problems and what it does to you. And then when you do have your treatment and you come out, is how you handle if there's any slight relapses or something, you know, having a tool in place to, you know, take you away from the temptation. And I think openness, you know, being able to say to people around you, look, you know, this is my phone, this is my accounts. I think that's a big start, because you're not got that secretiveness anymore, which I think is one of the big reasons people get addicted to stuff. They can hide it so well.
Absolutely. Well, we've reached the end of our time. Peter and Steph, thank you so much indeed for an incredibly meaningful hour that you've spent with us. And as Jim said, it would be really lovely to continue this relationship. I'm very pleased that I'm meeting with you, Steph, in 10 days' time, and it will be, you're both very welcome additions to the AFINet family. So thank you terribly, hugely much for this.
And well done, everybody
Everyone, keep up the great work.
trying to help make people's lives better, and that's what it's all about.
Now, carrying on this theme of lived experience and case studies, I'm now going to pass over to Emmy, because we now have a whole, the next set, before we have our next comfort break, the next set of talks is all about personal experience. So over to you, Emmy.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Emmi Kauppila, and many of you might remember my name because I have been in contact with everybody about the practical details about the conference. But so, in this session, we will have 3 presentations because unfortunately one presentation has been cancelled, the one by Martha Taremba. But on the other hand, this will allow us to have a bit longer lunch break after this session. So in this session, we have 3 great presentations. First, Marilyn Kemekeme from Cameroon will present qualitative case studies of drug addiction in African families. And after that, our trustee, our very own Cassandra Borges-Poltron, will present clinical case report of transgenerational transmission model of addiction. And after that, we have a presentation about gambling harm by Judy Abisar from Australia. But so, over to you, Marilyn.
Good morning. Should I start?
Yes, please go ahead. Yes, please.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Let me share my screen. Yep, here. Yes. Okay. All right. Do you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity. Thank you very much to AFINet and all the organizing committee. My name is Marilyn Keme. I'm a medical doctor and addiction certified practitioner, drug harm reduction expert working at the Center for Life at Yaoundé Central Hospital in Cameroon. And I'm honored to present drug addiction in African families, exploring risk and vulnerability factors, qualitative studies of 6 cases. So let me start with acknowledgement. First one is Didier Demassoso, a great, he is the co-author actually of this work. He is a clinical psychologist at Green Ribbon Health and Community Development Association, as well as
Marilyn.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. Your slides are not going forward.
Oh. Okay.
So
what's
in the past, what's happened is that you need to open them maybe in presentation mode.
Okay.
It's moved now. It's moved now. Yep, it's moved now.
Okay. All right, thank you. So I was, presenting the acknowledgement. The first one is the co-author of this work, Didier Demassoso. Second one is Ghislaine Jockey. He's also a clinical psychologist here at the Center for Life. And Wilfried Makani, also a clinical psychologist at Center for Life, working together. So let me present you a little bit Cameroon. Cameroon is a country in Central Africa. We love football, we love dances and nature. Cameroon is called Africa in miniature because all the flora and the fauna that we have here in Cameroon, we can find it all around the Africa. And here on the top of the left, you have another view of Yaoundé, the capital. So moving forward, we have the Addiction Care Center. It's The first one was been actually opened here in Cameroon. So it's we have 3 units. Addictology unit, it's basically for the overall management of the patient. Addiction behavior prevention unit is for sensitization, around the community, with the community-based organizations and all the stakeholders in the town. And we have the research and training unit who is responsible of data collection, processing, participation, ongoing training, and the work we are presenting today. We are going to talk about the addiction in the African, community, African families. So drug addiction is becoming a public health problem, even in African countries, affecting individual families and communities. And for instance, in Cameroon, one teenager over 8 has smoked a cigarette before, the age of 10. That's one a child actually, and one pupil over 10 has already used alcohol, during the parties and etc. And we have 60% of young people smoking cannabis who are dropping school, so they will not go into upgrade postgraduate education because of cannabis consumption. So in this study, our main objective was to improve the overall management of patients with drug addiction by involving their families. So we'll be presenting 6 clinical cases. Our aim is to highlight the causal link in the one hand between vulnerability factors such as an overly rigorous or overly permissive upbringing, and on the other hand, risk factors in families such as violent environment, absence of a parent's hardship, trauma, and the incidence of drug abuse with a disturbance of the parental relationship, fostering a lack of self-esteem and need of recognition and belonging. So the main question here is, how do vulnerability and risk factors lead to drug addiction, and what role do African families play in maintaining the abnormal and pathological behavior? So talking about the methodology, we this is a qualitative phenomenological study involving the presentation of 6 clinical cases. We have obtained the informed consent of the families involved in this study. We collected data from parents because in the beginning, during the consultation, we have interview guides during the primary assessment of parents, and we have that an interview guide that we were using to get a lot of data from the parents. So the interview guides contain 5 groups of questions, anthropological data, childhood trauma, marital status, because we have monogamic families as well as polygamic families also have a sort of impact in our Cameroonian setting, and mode of upbringing, type of relationships, etc. And we came up with the results. We carry out this thematic analysis of the interview guides, which reveals that individual vulnerability and environmental risk factors weaken a person's mental health and expose him to drug abuse. So we created the Pass Addict, the parent group for support and solidarity against addiction, which is a special platform for parents for parents and caregivers to express how or what they are living with a child or a patient with drug addiction, and how we are going along with them to really help them to help the patient to quit smoking. So the involvement of parents in the during the overall care process through a family approach and group therapy for parents has enabled us to improve relationship between the parents and their patient, and has an impact on the mental health and strengthen their motivation to quit actually smoking, quit using drugs. So it was very interesting to look inside. So here in this slide, you have the 6 cases, the different 6 cases, and you can see that the vulnerability factors and the risk factors are very different. So for example, for instance, the vulnerability factors that is the most common among the 6 cases is the upbringing, the rigorous upbringing that we can have in the family. So a rigorous upbringing means no communication, and that is leading to lack of self-esteem. The patient needs recognition and is lacking a self of belonging. So we're seeking those, those things outside. So we'll be going with friends and start smoking, etc. And we also have a permissive. Among those 6 cases, we have 1 case of permissive upbringing, but that case, it was an orphan. So that orphan, it was, it didn't have anybody to support him, anybody to teach him something. So it was, growing up with the cousins, with the aunts, and everywhere. So it was indeed a permissive upbringing, educational case. And we have also a polygamic family structure of the family, which is very complex because with the socio-economical issues in Cameroon, it's difficult to go ahead or go up with two families. So we have 2 mothers and several children, and all the children don't have enough of the support they need. So these are the cases we found, and further, we are planning to build up a parenting program in order to advocate for the politics to put in place a parenting program all over the country. So to conclude, we can say that changes in nature, structure, and dynamics of African family could be a workable hypothesis to explain both vulnerability and risk factors in the development of addictive behaviors. So by emphasizing the psychological and social dimension in the standard care in addictology, we observe better patient adherence and great progress in their overall care process. So it was all for me. Thank you very much in different African languages.
Thank you so much, Marilyn. That was really fascinating. We haven't had presentations from Cameroon before in AFINet conferences, so I'm sure that this was something that many of us learned a lot from. But we have now almost 10 minutes for comments and questions. So the floor is open.
Okay. Yes.
Aha, Richard, go ahead, please.
As usual, sorry. Marilyn, thank you very much. Fascinating, and as Embi said, actually, not only have we not had a presentation, I think you are our first member of AFINet from Cameroon. So, and I welcome you most warmly and look forward to a lot of interaction. It will be, I think. Many of the things you're saying are really interesting and exciting, and it's wonderful to hear about such very different cultures and how some of the problems are so very similar, and maybe some of the solutions we can learn from each other in lots of ways. I'm interested about family involvement in treatment. You were talking about both risk and vulnerability factors leading to addiction. And you were also saying that how important it was to think about the family within the treatment context. And I was wondering what you do in Cameroon, in your unit, about family involvement in the treatment process.
Thank you very much for this question. As I was saying that we have 3 units. The unit of addictology is taking care of the patient. And first of all, we are evaluating the patient, analyzing the vulnerability factors as well as the risk factors. But we have individual therapy and group therapy for the patients. And we have that passage group specialized for parents and caregivers. So we invite the patient for its own therapy, and we invite also the parent, and we have sessions with them, exploring their way of upbringing and looking inside their trauma, the trauma they had maybe in childhood, how they feel about their patient, their child, because mostly in our setting, people think that it's something that has been given by somebody else in the villages, for example. So they don't understand that it's actually an illness. It's actually a whole mechanism that is going on inside the brain, and that's leading to addiction. And it's having a physiological aspect and as well as psychological aspect. So we are trying to first of all explain to them what is it about, what is addiction, what is an addiction, and then giving them tips for the daily life, how to communicate, because the rigorous upbringing, for example, you don't have any communication. You can't say anything to your father or to your mom. You can say that, okay, I'm feeling this way. The parents, they just need the child to learn, and that's all. So there will be no communication. So we are trying to teach them how to really improve their relationship with the children. And we believe that by improving the environment, I mean the environment of the patient, will be less, less, how do you say it in English?
Less likely to relapse.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Less likely to relapse. I mean, you're
Yeah.
talking here. It sounds as if all of the people who come in with addiction problems are young people, because you're talking about the family in terms of parents, as opposed to, for example, slightly older people who might be having their own families, being in relationships with. And do you not deal with any people with addiction problems who are already in adult relationships and therefore have spouses, or maybe even who are themselves parents? Is the pattern of addiction in Cameroon confined just to young people?
Well, most of our patients are young people, actually, because the population is young. So we have a lot of students and teenagers. Although they drop school, but they are still young. They are under 30 or 40. But
Well,
it's
if
been
someone
a
is
year.
40, for example, if someone's 40, then they're quite
Yes,
likely, I
they
would have
still
thought, to
come.
have a family of their own.
We have adults also coming in the center. So we have married people. They come with their spouse. They come with their parents also. So we also have adults as population, but mostly young people.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Those were great questions. I was wondering myself that, considering the results of this study, do you have policy recommendations that would improve the family-based addiction care?
Yes, that's one of our recommendation. Actually, we are planning to work on a parenting program. That's why I was really interested into the craft yesterday, to see
Great.
how to really implement something like that in our setting, because we really need to teach. I mean, to teach other people how to manage their family, how to be more great parents, or the parenting thing is not well organized in our setting. We have problems in the bounding. So the relationships are a little bit mechanic, So we are really working, looking forward to this program and to do some advocacy to our politicians, let them see at the level of the Ministry of Education and how to really put it into implementation. Yes, so that is one of the main recommendation. And for us, it's really important to do activities at the level of the primary prevention, because we do a lot of secondary and tertiary prevention. People go to the health facilities already. They are doing this and that, but no one is wondering how should we do for to prevent and avoid some addictive behaviors. So for us, it's very important to really at the level of the family, that small cell home, what is happening in order to prevent the addictive behaviors.
Yes, thank you so much, Marilyn. We have time for one more brief question or comment from the audience. But if there are no further comments, we can move on to our next presentation by Cassandra Borges-Portolon. Thanks again, Marilyn. This was really, really wonderful presentation.
Thank you very much.
Hello.
Hello, Cassandra.
Hello. I will share my presentation. Just a moment, please.
Yes, no worries.
Ele vai sair em cima de ti.
If there is a problem, I would be happy to share the presentation as well.
Okay, I will try more twice.
Okay. Yes.
Doesn't appear my presentation, but one moment, please.
Okay.
Please, Amy, do you share for me, please?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Oops, sorry, wrong file.
Oh, no, no problem.
Ah,
The last presentation. Yes.
so this is the one.
Okay. Thank you. I'm
Oh, sorry, just a moment.
I'm sorry my delay, but I am a little bit nervous. So because this I didn't find my presentation. Okay. Uh,
So,
okay. I am thankful for being here with everyone that is part of the AFINet conference network. I would like to thank you, especially the AFINet chair, Amy, Marilyn, and Judy for being in the session with me today. I am Cassandra Borges Bortolom, AFINet trustee. I am working as psychologist and a researcher in Brazil. Also, I am director of Accurarte and CEO Accuratech. Today, I will present Transgenerational Transmission Model of the Addiction Problem, a Clinical Case Report. I want to thank also my patient, Kleber, that allow this presentation. Please, Amy. Okay. I'll start to talk about the transgenerationality. I think very important to share with you about the process. It consists of a process transmitted from one generation to another that is repeated through family patterns in spite of the family members not realizing it. It is characterized by legacy, values, behaviors, beliefs, secrets, rights, and myths. The transgenerationality remains present throughout the family's history. So I will share with you about one clinical case report that reports a lot of process about the transgenerationality. The name of my patient is changed. I will call Kleber. The therapeutic process, which has been happening for 9 months with weekly sessions. Also, he has been doing psychiatric treatment for 3 years. He takes some medications, bupropion, naltrexone, and lamotrigine. Please. I will present some initial information about Kleber, a clinical case report. He is divorced. He is 45 years old, and he is a business administrator. Next. On the razor's edge. Kleber describes himself and his family as living on the razor's edge. What does it mean? Under pressure and putting himself at risk, related to alcohol abuse, hypersexual behavior, and other behaviors that compromise his safety. I thought very interesting the term that Kleb told in some sessions as living on the razor's edge.
Oh my goodness, it's the
The next, please. I want to highlight now about the transgenerationality in the Soares genogram. So I will share some tool that help us with practitioner therapeuts about to see the picture, the whole family. But now I will highlight about the transgenerationality. Please put our next. Okay, it is. Please focus in the blue box, abuse alcohol intake. Kleber's grandfather had an abusive alcohol intake. Kleber's father's, Alfredo, has an abusive intake and hyperactive sexual behavior. Kleber's mother's, Anna, has an abusive alcohol intake. Kleber's brothers, Eduardo, has an abusive alcohol intake. Kleber's son-in-law, Igor, has an abusive alcohol intake. Então, this picture shows about the transgenerationality related to abusive alcohol intake and the other behaviors about that happens impulsive manner. Please, next. Now, I will show the Soares family timeline from the moment Kleber's parents met, 1976, until present moment, end of August. Almost 50 years of history, mainly points that highlight the on the razor's edge and the transgenerational transmission model of addiction problem. Please, next. Okay. Next. So I will present parents met, Alfredo and Anna. Parents, marriage, first child Kleber's birth, second child Roger's birth, third child Julia's birth, father's Alfredo abusive alcohol intake, father's hyperactivity sexual behavior, fourth child Eduardo's birth, Holy Family moved between rural towns, Kleber's daughter Marina. Kleber's had a relationship with a colleague, Rachel, on his first job. He had his first sexual relationship in which she got pregnant. Next, please. Now you are in 2001. Alfredo started a company under Kleber's name, which Alfredo administered. Kleber's hyperactive sexual behavior. Kleber's abusive alcohol intake. Kleber's and Bruna's marriage. Kleber's mother, Anna, begins intensive alcohol intake and continues until the present day. Kleber's company, administered by his father, had fiscal problems that compromised Kleber's savings that took 10 years to resolve. Kleber divorced Bruna. Eduard's abused alcohol intake. Alfredo's accident. He fell from the second floor of a prostitution establishment that resulted in severe immediate and long-term damages. Dementia. Next, please, Amy. Kleber's parents divorced. Kleber's parents didn't have a good relationship for a long time. Even as children, their sons didn't accept the father's behavior toward the mother. Kleber takes his father in to live with him. He organizes an apartment on the first floor of his house. Kleber's begin dating Fabiana. 2024, she is diagnosed with depression. Kleber is diagnosed by a psychiatrist with bipolar disorder. Kleber's grandson Enzo is born. Marina married a man, Igor, that consumes alcohol abusively. Fabiana makes contact to learn more about substance use disorder treatment and to schedule an appointment to Kleber with the psychotherapist. Kleber begins specialized treatment for SUD. The next, please. Thank you, Amy, for help. 2023 October, 2024 March, Kleber stops drinking for 3 months. After this period, he starts drinking. Kleber showed improvement in his consciousness about the transgenerational model and using tools to deal with addiction problems. 2024 May, Kleber was impacted directly by southern Brazil floods. The entire first floor of his house was flooded. Kleber's behaviors on the razor's edge. Fabiana contacts the psychotherapist to report Kleber's abusive alcohol intake. At the present, Kleber intensified his abusive alcohol intake, betrayed his girlfriend, got into financial trouble at the same prostitution establishment where Alfredo's accident happened. Please, next. Moving forward, supporting Kleber to return and maintain his learning process, behaviors, thoughts, actions, and family relations with a virtuous circle. Quit drinking, have a healthier relationship with his girlfriend, and continue good performance in his job. Continue Kleber's psychotherapy with systemic therapy to explore more connections among individual, familiar, and social aspects. Next, please. Regardless, Kleber has acquired more knowledge and comprehension about his family legacy in a transgenerational transmission model of the addiction problem, alcohol intake, and hyperactive sexual behavior. Finally, it is important to stimulate all of Kleber's family members to engage in specialized treatment for addiction problems. Next, please. Reference I used. The next. Thank you very much and a good conference for us.
Thank you, Cassandra. That was really fascinating. So now the floor is open for any comments or questions. Mary-Lane. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Cassandra, for this wonderful presentation. It was very interesting, observing how, during the years, all over the years, people were behaving in that family. And I was wondering, do you guys look in some, vulnerability factors? I mean, maybe something, what led into the addictive behavior, as well as to understand what was behind that depression, that, all of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn, for your question. In Brazil, it's very common the use alcohol in all events. For example, events about the routine. So this problem initially in the another generation, and it is common to repeat the pattern in the another generation. It is common to use for a man, for example, the family shift in the another generation. And sometimes the use alcohol is linked about, for example, I work a lot today, so now I starting my home and I need relax. I deserve this. So I think in another generation it is in another generation began, and you said some points, for example, depression, anxiety, or other things. The father, Alfredo, father Kleber's fathers, is a man, a very a man has a lot of others compulsion or abusive, impulsive behavior. For example, the constructor, the background about the hyperactive sexual Alfredo's betrayed Anna in the initial marriage. This child, I think he was a little bit neglected for these parents. I think there are a lot of things about this, but I am I would like too much to see Kleber, because he is a guy with conditions to learn, to thinking about this, even despite of the context. Kleber is a good organized for buildings. Kleber is a caregiver. The others families. It is Kleber always surprised me about this another resilience domains that he has. Thank you, Marilyn.
Thank you. We have time for one more comment or question. But if there are none, I will use this opportunity to say thank you, Cassandra. That was I really like the way you visualized the family, like the patterns, and I really enjoyed this presentation.
Thank you, Amy.
Okay, so next we will move on to gambling and lived experience. So we will give the floor to Judy Avisar from Australia.
Hello everyone.
Hello.
My name's Judy, and I am from SHARC, which I think many of you know, the Self-Help Addiction Resource Centre. And I coordinate a program called 3 Sides of the Coin, which is a lived experience storytelling program with people who've been harmed by gambling. So I will share my screen. I'm getting some help here. Okay, no. The beginning, yeah. Okay, so our work is working with people with lived experience of gambling harm through their stories being transformed to theatre, to performance. And a piece of research was done by Deakin University about the work, the impact of the work. But just before I start, I just wanted you to know, those who may not know, that we in Australia are the biggest losers in the world. We lose more per capita through gambling than any other country. And here I have written 25 billion a year. And last week we were told the number has gone up to 32 billion. So it's very much part of our culture. And our project, 3 Sides of the Coin, empowers people with lived experience to perform their stories to educate about gambling harm. We educate professionals in allied fields of mental health, drugs, alcohol, family violence, the criminal justice sector, to get them to put gambling on their radar and understand the intersectionality of gambling. So our intention is to change attitudes, to increase the understanding of gambling harm, the confidence of professionals to talk about it to their clients, to humanize the people behind the addiction, increase empathy, reduce the stigma and shame, so more people will feel free to speak up and seek help. As I said, we want to put gambling on professionals' radar and include gambling as a screening question in client assessment in order to disrupt the normalization of gambling here and frame gambling as a public health issue. So in this piece of research, there were a few questions that were asked. Do these performances by people with lived experience increase audience understanding of gambling harm, increase audience empathy to those impacted by gambling harm, and lead to positive changes in attitudes and behaviours of professionals in the short and longer term? And how does performing arts impact these outcomes? So there were, in terms, in terms of the methodology, there were 224 staff working in these allied sectors that were surveyed immediately after a performance, which we call a professional development session, where we perform and then there's a discussion among the audience. And then we had a follow-up 3 to 12 months, usually around 6 months later, and 66 staff from those sectors responded. So the findings showed, I think I'll maybe show you the graph, it's more graphic, is that there was an increase in understanding and empathy and confidence of professionals to ask about gambling harm. And as you can see, the blue is immediately post-performance in the surveys, in the evaluation, and then the green is in the 3 to 12 month follow-up later. So these qualitative themes were the understanding of the complexity and the scale of gambling harm in Australia, the impacts of gambling, and the shame and stigma. And in terms of the work practices, the concern was to engage with, have the confidence to engage with clients who gambled, to know how to speak to them, to ask questions in a non-stigmatizing way, and to be alert and aware of gambling issues and work in a respectful and empathetic manner. And just a few reflections of the professionals. I'll just read one. I'll be more conscious of asking clients about their gambling behavior. I'll be more aware of the shame and stigma surrounding the behavior. And over time, we saw a consistency with these responses immediately post-performance. Like, I've probably had some negative beliefs and I've definitely changed these beliefs. And then 6 months later, I feel more empathy towards people with gambling issues. And another one would be post-performance, I'm more open to ask about gambling. And then 6 months later, I actually ask more often about gambling, both to clients and family members. So this basically turned out to be a very positive and sustained impact upon audiences, the use of this artistic method of transforming people's stories into theatre. So as we see, very high, 98+% of people found that it was a powerful way to connect to the issues and to present the material. So now I'd like to actually give an example of one of the stories. I spoke about performance, but in this context, as we're online, we've also created video stories, and I'd like to give an example of someone's video story so that you can get an example, an idea of the way stories are presented dramatically. So this is the story of Chandana, and Chandana is with us, and she'll be open for questions after we see the performance, see the video. Here to this. I'm trying to.
This is not the person I knew. He said to me, I would like to grow old with you. He was a friend. He called me Kuttima, little mother. He wanted me to be a typical Indian woman. Why do you need to work? Do you really need to work? You can take care of the house. Do you know my sister? She gets up at 6 o'clock in the morning. My mother does everything in the house. No office in Vandirken. I'm tired of Samikapudada. I didn't think this was him. Drinking. Every single day drinking. Wherever you go, you're drinking. How do I stop you drinking? We should just go away far from here. Let's go to California. Okay. What about India? Or Canada? Or Australia? Or somewhere else? I was just hoping things will just turn out better. Australia doesn't have a drinking culture. So I thought. We came to Australia with our 2-year-old daughter. We wanted to give her a good future, good education, more choices in life. We did get excellent jobs with very high salaries. Oh, fine. We are doing very well. We are trying to settle in. My daughter is doing really well. She's even started speaking in English, you know. My job is going really well. My husband, he's at work. Yeah, he's doing really well. He's working very hard, you know. It's very hard to settle in this country. And we are getting there. Thank you. Let's open separate accounts in Australia, my husband said. I was earning well. I was paying for our rent, car, childcare. My husband was taking care of all our accounts online. We had over $100,000 in our foreign accounts. My husband, my husband is crying. We had only been in Australia for 8 months. He said, "Pana ellam poiduchu. I don't have anything in my accounts. Our foreign account, his account, our joint accounts, empty." Amen. Gambling. What do you mean you can't stop? What about our daughter? Should I leave or should I stay? What should I do? I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Can't tell you a story today. Please listen to me. He's drinking a lot. We've lost a lot of money. Please hear my side. Who do I have in this country to help me? I don't want my daughter to. What if I lose my job? Just keep quiet. Don't say anything. Maybe he will change. Sweetheart, sit here. Mommy has to go in, okay? Play with the toys. I'll console. I'm applying for an intervention order against my husband. What kind of a wife are you? You're going to the courts, to the police? Enna problem? Police court aren't you ashamed of yourself? My relative said, it's your job. He'll change. If you're okay, he'll be okay. But I was terrified of my future. Basically, I didn't have confidence in myself. Slowly, with the support of the psychologist and the law enforcement, I got some new perspectives. Every time I came home and something else happened, why am I allowing this to happen? I have to leave him. The foundation of marriage is respect. We may call love and all of the other things. If your self-respect is not valued in a relationship, it's not worth it. I was protecting something which was already gone. To be honest, I did not understand what gambling was. Actually, I lied. I tried to hide my situation. You need to reach out for another person to support you. I wasn't ready for a long time. People who believed in me, they brought me out of my shell. I could believe in myself. Without that, I couldn't be where I am now. So, thank you, and I am grateful for those people to be present in my life. What is it that I want? my values had changed from making money and a good life to making a difference. I started going out, meeting other people who had gone through gambling issues and talking to them. When I come across women going through any issues, I tell them, speak up, talk to people, don't put a wall around you. Somebody will be able to help you. I've learned to let myself go, to not take things as seriously as I used to have some fun with my daughter. I always wanted to learn dance. Thought, I'm too old and I'm not good enough. I'm not young enough. But at this age, I started learning Indian classical dance with a group of people who were 10, 15 years younger to me. I want to dance, I want to sing, I want to be happy.
Hello, we're back again. And Chandana, are you here? Can you be on the screen? I wonder, is there a way to put her so that we can see Chandana? Because now is a time for all of you to have any questions that you'd like to Chandana before we just finish. We're nearly at the end of the presentation, but I'd really think it's important to take this time to be able to ask Chandana some questions. Chandana, can you say something? I can't see you.
Hi, I'm here, Judy.
Yeah. Oh,
You
great.
can, yeah, Emmy can pin me if needed.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So do you want to invite people to ask questions?
Yeah, please, any questions, fine. I'm not, I'm able to answer whatever you feel from this presentation. Yeah.
Yes, Richard, go ahead, please.
Thank you.
Well, I was determined not to go first again, but I just felt I had to. I haven't got a question for you, Chandra. I just want to say that was absolutely marvelous. I think the whole presentation, the two of you together, Judy and Chandra, have been wonderful. But your video, the creativity in the production of it, coupled with the strength of your story and how you summarized such a huge amount of material in such a short but amazingly accessible way. If I hadn't been in any way a fan of performance art as a way of doing things before, you have totally convinced me. I just thought it was wonderful. So all I want to do is just say thank you. Such a powerful presentation, really wonderful.
Thank you. That's Catherine, who's present there as well, her creativity and summarizing everything.
I'd like to also, this is Catherine Simmons. I coordinate the project. Catherine is the artistic director, and it is her expertise in storytelling with people of many different marginalized communities that she's received an Australian award for her work. And yes, that ability to...
Well, I'm not surprised. You don't just deserve an Australian award, you deserve an international award. I mean, that was just absolutely marvelous. And I spend half my life living in India, so it captured India as well. Incredibly, everything about it was just spot on. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you very much.
And I should say, Richard, this is the way we actually operate, whether it's a live performance or a video. As people, people are so impacted, they see it, and we don't usually say, okay, have you got a question? We usually ask the audience, take a breath and maybe a word to describe what you feel right now. And so that gives a sense of what's happening in the room, and then we go to the questions. But because of time, we jump that phase. But Chandana is a great source of knowledge and experience. So it'd be so good if someone can ask Chandana a question. Yeah.
Thank you. You can ask anything. There's no, you don't need to hold back.
And I asked that, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who is like struggling with taking the first step in getting help for themselves as an affected family member?
I wouldn't go so far to say I can, I am at a stage where I can advise. But from my experience, as I had mentioned, it's the first thing is being aware of where one can seek help from. There are so many services and help that's out there, and also developing the awareness about what is gambling. What are the things that surrounds gambling? What is the life cycle, if you want to say, about gambling? Like now there is a little bit more awareness in like life cycle of family violence or things like that. Like that, being aware of it and then seeking help for yourself, family members, affected people. They say there are 7 to 10 people for every person who's affected by gambling. So getting the help means, for me personally, maybe if I had the awareness at that point, my relationship may not have broken down. I could have sought the help to repair it. So the sooner you seek help, the better. And there is a lot of help out there. Thank you.
Okay. Should I continue the presentation? Or Richard, did you want to say something?
No, I just, Ali in the chat has said, how is your daughter?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, she is good. Actually, she's right here.
How old is she? How old is she now?
She is an adult officially. She just turned 21 this year.
Congratulations.
So,
happy birthday.
thank you. Thank you. She's doing well. She's aware of what's happened, but at the same time, she is connected with her father. She sees him and I guess to some extent she understands what's happened. And she's studying psychology, maybe for that reason. And she's doing well, thankfully.
I do have one more question if we have time. I'm very aware of the familial and cultural pressure to stay in India, to stay in a marriage, and the way that other family members can blame the spouse for the behavior. If you were a better wife, he wouldn't drink. If you were a better wife, he wouldn't gamble, etc., etc. Obviously, you're very well aware of that as well. How did you manage to gain the strength to act in a different way than your cultural expectations told you that you had to?
Spot on, Richard. I mean, it's been touched a little bit in the video, but I had to take an intervention order and I withdrew it because of the pressure that I had from everywhere. And even with alcohol, I was like there is some sort of prevalence of alcohol issues in India. So I did put up with it and try to talk to people about it. But gambling, I could not talk to anybody because nobody was even like aware of what it is, because it doesn't exist in this form in India. So I couldn't speak. And then even like after my father, once he came here and he said, "Oh, you had to separate." We went to the casino here, and he just looked around and he said, "Oh, you had to leave him for this?" And like there is no understanding. So for many years people didn't even know we had separated, and even now nobody knows that gambling and alcohol was involved. But I mean, there is a little bit of awareness about alcohol that's happening. Self, help like and rehabs and addiction centers in India, but obviously there's no prevalence of gambling, so there's no awareness of help for gambling in India. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Chandana. Thank you very much. I'll just finish the okay. Oops, go right down to this one. The bottom one. Okay. No, it isn't. Okay, well, I suppose we're now open to general questions about the piece of research as well. We have done a follow-up small study about the impact of these videos as well, and it aligns with the impact of the live performance. But the videos enable us to do work anywhere in the world, so we'd love to collaborate with any of you. But I think that's the end of the presentation, and I'm open to questions.
Thank you so much, Judy. So, Gallus has.
Yeah, so now I'll step in. I just wonder, did you, to what extent were you able to distribute these videos also among professionals working with family members, and did you receive any feedback?
Yes, we have, and sorry, you were saying with family members. So we have been to several support groups of family members and come with like Chandana and her video and had a conversation with people. And people are very interested and moved and learn from what they see. But also, I think there's been a great impact for people who gamble themselves, who have said, I've never, because the one unique thing about our group is that it contains both people themselves who gamble and those who are impacted. And I never take that for granted, that we all live together as one family. And the people who there's a mutual learning there. I mean, Chanda can talk from her side of learning from people who've gambled when you have a partner who's never admitted to a problem. And the people who've gambled speak about never thinking about the impact on the family. It was only their own issue. So it's been a two-way street.
Yeah, and it's been a cathartic process for both, because three sides of the coin, we see the other side. Like for me, I had never come across anybody who's gambled at all in my life. So when I met people who had gambled and recovered, I saw another side, and a lot of my anger and my, things that was bubbling inside, I could actually calm down a little and learned that it's another habit, or it's just another part of a person. It's not the whole person. So I could like slowly get to the point of forgiving a little bit and accepting what has happened to us. So yeah, definitely, it's a great space, which I know, as Judy said, it's very like people standing outside of this space would think, how can it work? But it's been working for many years. So I'm so thankful for that.
And just another additional question, because actually I was also thinking about the impact it has on people who are not addicted themselves and who are not family members, but who are working professionally with them, and even more also about people who are not of nothing like that, because I felt it quite impressive how you also described the reaction of your social network. And I think there's a lack of empathy, and we coined it a kind of double stigmatization family members are facing. And I was just thinking, probably you got some data on this, that we know that contact interventions are the most effective when it comes to reducing stigma. And I think experiences like yours, Chandana, or like the video you did, are very powerful means of reducing stigma and helping people to develop empathy.
Spot on. Yeah, definitely. I would say that. And since I've started speaking through Judy or through local universities, I've had people referred to me, especially people from my background, seeking, like, because of the stigma, not being able to talk to anybody else. So stigma is huge, and especially migrant communities like mine, where there isn't much awareness about this issue at all. So, I mean, we definitely are doing a big, service towards reducing the stigma. I would think so. Yeah.
And I hope when you receive the PowerPoint, I didn't mention it's the Journal of Gambling Studies that the study came out in, so one can see it there. Yeah. I think that's it, Emmy. And if there's
yes, one more question in from the comment section is that do you use other forms of art?
Well, this project, Three Sides of the Coin, is about performance art, about storytelling and performance. We actually the whole project began with writing, story writing, and producing a book, and then it became performance. But Pauline is an example. Yeah, and so not everyone has to be as visible and as Chandana. There are some people who want to tell their story but don't want to have their face shown. So for Catherine, it's always a challenge, artistic challenge, and we have a woman in our group who that was her situation. So the video she began the process with Catherine without showing her face. And then after this work, I mean, it takes a lot of work. This is always a lot of work and deep process. She came to the point, she said, well, actually, when we come to that shift and the recovery, and I realized I do want to have my face there. And so there was a transition, and very artistically, very creatively portrayed in a video. So please be in touch if you would like to, explore collaboration with the videos.
Certainly. Thank you so much. This was such an inspiring and lovely presentation. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chandana.
Thank you. Fantastic presentation from everyone. Thank you.
Yes. Now we are going to take a break of, let's see, 10 minutes. Comfort break, get some coffee, and let's see you soon.